A millionaire was shocked to see the love of his life, who vanished 6 years ago. Begging with twins, the reason left him horrified. Michael Carter was a man accustomed to luxury and power. As the owner of one of the largest tech companies in New York, he had everything most people dreamed of: a successful career, a comfortable life, and a fortune that grew by the day. Yet, behind his impeccable appearance and confident smile, there was a wound that had never healed. 6 years ago, Emily, the love of his life, had vanished without a trace. The pain of her loss still consumed him, but he had learned to mask it well. On that cold November morning, Michael had no idea his life was about to change. While crossing a busy street in the heart of the city, something caught his attention. Sitting in a corner on the sidewalk, dressed in worn-out clothes and with a distant gaze, was a woman who seemed eerily familiar. Beside her were 2 small girls, clutching her hands and shivering in the biting cold. Before continuing, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Michael stopped. The world around him seemed to fall silent. He took a few hesitant steps toward the woman. When he finally saw her face, the ground seemed to vanish beneath his feet. It was Emily. There was no doubt. The eyes that had once lit up his world were now filled with sadness and exhaustion. Before he could gather his thoughts, his attention shifted to the girls. Their faces, their expressions, they were echoes of his own childhood. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. Emily looked up, and for a fleeting moment, recognition flickered in her eyes before being replaced by a mixture of shame and fear. Michael felt a flood of emotions: joy, confusion, and an overwhelming pain. What had happened to her? And who were these little girls? Michael's heart clenched as he took a closer look at the girls. Their features were unmistakable. The shape of their eyes, the curve of their noses, even the shy smile of one of them, it was like looking into a mirror. He was stunned. How could 2 children he had never seen look so much like him? His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. The girls, identical twins, seemed to be about 5 or 6 years old, the exact amount of time since Emily had disappeared. His heart pounded harder as suspicion turned into a terrible and all-consuming certainty. These girls could be his daughters. Fighting to steady his breathing, Michael knew he had to act. He knelt down slowly, careful not to startle Emily or the children. "Emily." "It's me, Michael," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The girls looked at him curiously, but Emily immediately pulled them closer, as if to shield them. "Michael, leave," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "You shouldn't be here. This has nothing to do with you." Her response shocked him, but he refused to back down. "Emily, what's going on? These girls? Are they my daughters?" His question was filled with urgency but also vulnerability. He didn't know what hurt more: the state she was in or the thought that he had missed years of their lives. Emily looked away, but her expression spoke louder than words. Her eyes carried a mixture of guilt and pain. Michael could see the answer was obvious, even if she didn't say it aloud. One of the girls, curious, reached out and took Michael's hand. "Are you Daddy?" she asked with the innocence only a child could possess, while the other, more timid, hid behind her mother. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. "I think I am, sweetheart," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Emily couldn't hold back her tears. "Michael, please just go. This isn't as simple as you think." "Simple?" He stood up, his voice heavy with emotion. "Emily, you vanished for 6 years, and now I find you on the street with 2 girls who are clearly my daughters. Nothing about this is simple. I deserve to know the truth." She took a deep breath, but before she could say anything else, a distant siren startled her. She stood abruptly. "I can't. Not now." Taking the girl's hands, Emily began to walk away. Desperate, Michael called out to her. "Emily, I'm not giving up. We need to talk. You can't just disappear again." He stood there, watching as she vanished into the crowd, taking with her the answers he so desperately needed. The following days were torturous for Michael. He became consumed with what had happened. Sleep evaded him as his mind replayed the scene of Emily fleeing with the girls. Every detail was etched into his memory. The exhaustion in Emily's eyes, her worn-out clothes, and most of all, the innocent voice of one of the girls asking if he was their father. Determined not to let them vanish again, Michael mobilized his private security team. He provided every detail he could recall. The corner where he had seen them, descriptions of Emily and the children, even the direction they had taken when fleeing. His wealth and influence quickly bore fruit. 2 days later, he received a call. Emily was living in a homeless shelter in Brooklyn. Michael went there personally. The sight of the shelter shocked him. The building was small, the conditions were grim, and dozens of people were waiting outside for a place to sleep. He never imagined Emily could be living like this. His heart sank under the weight of guilt. How had he not known? As he entered, a mix of anxiety and hope swirled inside him. The receptionist confirmed that Emily was there but hesitated before letting him proceed. "She's very private. I don't think she'll appreciate surprises," the woman said with concern. Michael nodded but insisted. He climbed the stairs to the shared dormitory, and when he opened the door, he saw Emily sitting on a small mattress with the girls beside her, coloring with some crayons. All three looked up at once, and Emily turned pale when she saw him. "I told you to leave me alone, Michael," she began, already on her feet, instinctively placing herself between him and the girls. "And I told you I'm not giving up," he replied firmly, though his voice was heavy with sadness. "Emily, you need to tell me the truth. Do you really think you can hide this from me? Those girls are my daughters. I know they are." Emily remained silent for a long moment, her eyes filling with tears. She finally sighed and said, her voice trembling, "Yes, Michael, they're your daughters, Chloe and Charlotte." His heart stopped for a second before racing like never before. He looked at the girls, who were watching him with curiosity. "Why, Emily? Why did you disappear? Why didn't you tell me about them?" Emily seemed to be fighting an internal battle. At last, she gave in. "I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice." She lowered her gaze, gripping the girls' hands tightly. "They threatened me, Michael, Gregory and Jessica. They said they would destroy you and your company if I didn't leave your life. They knew I was pregnant. I thought I was protecting you. I thought..." Her voice broke, and she couldn't continue. Michael stood frozen. Her words swirled in his mind like a storm. Gregory, Jessica, his closest partners, people he had trusted implicitly. They had orchestrated all of this? He clenched his fists, feeling anger rise like an uncontrollable flame. "Emily, you're not going through this alone anymore. I'll fix everything. I'll take them down," he said, his voice filled with grim determination. Michael left the shelter with his heart shattered, but his mind was consumed by a fierce resolve. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he could, and would, fight to make things right for Emily and the girls. Every word she had spoken echoed in his mind. Gregory and Jessica, the people he had trusted most, had betrayed not just him but his entire family. As he got into his car, Michael picked up his phone and called Daniel, his longtime attorney and the only person he still felt he could trust. "Daniel, I need you to investigate Gregory and Jessica immediately. I want every suspicious transaction, shady deal, and anything they've been hiding." Daniel, though puzzled by the urgency in Michael's voice, agreed without hesitation. Michael knew that exposing Gregory and Jessica would take more than just confronting them directly. He needed solid evidence. But in the meantime, there was something even more pressing: ensuring that Emily and the girls were safe and off the streets. The next morning, Michael returned to the shelter. Emily looked surprised to see him again, but Michael got straight to the point. "You can't stay here. This place isn't safe for you or the girls. Pack your things. You're coming with me." "Michael, I can't accept that, Emily replied, her voice tense. I've already risked too much by being near you. I can't put you in danger again. Emily, listen to me. What they did was cowardly. But now I know the truth, and I won't let them keep controlling our lives. Besides, I can't stand the thought of you and the girls going without while I have everything. Please. Emily hesitated, glancing at the girls, who were playing in the corner of the room with some old toys. She knew Michael was right, but fear still gripped her. After a few minutes of silence, she finally nodded. Michael took Emily and the girls to one of his luxurious apartments in Manhattan, a discreet location far from prying eyes. He hired a nanny and arranged for clothes, food, and toys for the children. Chloe and Charlotte, initially shy, began to warm up to him, and Michael felt an unparalleled joy in getting to know them better, even amidst the chaos. One evening, as Emily was putting the girls to bed, Michael called her to the living room. Emily, I want you to know that I'll protect you and the girls at any cost. But to do that, I need you to tell me everything, down to the smallest detail. I need to understand exactly what Gregory and Jessica did. Emily took a deep breath. Michael, they approached me shortly after I found out I was pregnant. They knew you were about to close a major international deal and said my involvement with you was a distraction that could ruin everything. But it wasn't just that. She hesitated, looking down at her trembling hands. They also threatened me and the girls. They said they'd do terrible things if I didn't disappear. I was so scared. Michael felt the anger surge within him again, but he restrained himself. He took her hands in his. Emily, you don't have to be afraid anymore. I'll make sure justice is served. Gregory and Jessica will never hurt you or our daughters again. Promise. In the days that followed, Michael immersed himself in his pursuit of justice. He spent his mornings deeply investigating Gregory and Jessica's activities, and his evenings getting to know his daughters better. Chloe was talkative and curious, constantly asking questions about the luxurious toys and the spacious apartment. Charlotte, on the other hand, was more introspective, but her eyes lit up whenever Michael shared stories from his own childhood. Emily, though still hesitant, began to relax in Michael's presence. She watched with a mix of relief and emotion as he bonded with the girls. She had never imagined that he could one day be so close to their daughters. Yet, despite everything, a shadow still loomed over her, a lingering sense that the danger was never truly far away. Meanwhile, Daniel delivered the initial findings of the investigation. Michael spent hours poring over documents, uncovering a pattern of corruption far worse than he had imagined. Gregory had embezzled company funds for personal gain, diverting money from major contracts. Jessica, on the other hand, had manipulated meetings and key decisions to benefit her partner. Together, they had built a web of lies to keep Michael under control, eliminating any threats, including Emily. At the end of a long afternoon, Daniel brought something even more damning: messages exchanged between Gregory and Jessica during the time Emily disappeared. The conversations were explicit, clearly revealing their involvement in orchestrating everything, from threatening Emily to manipulating Michael into ensuring he would never suspect a thing. Michael felt his blood boil as he read the messages. Each word was like a direct blow to his trust. The person he once considered his wife had actively worked to destroy him. And Gregory, his longtime partner and friend, was even worse, a traitor willing to do anything to achieve his ambitions. He called Daniel again. "Is this enough to take them down?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. "Yes, Michael. We have solid evidence of fraud, extortion, and manipulation. We can present this to the authorities immediately if you want." Michael thought for a moment. "Not yet. I want to do this my way. I want everyone to see who they really are. I'm going to expose them publicly." Daniel hesitated. "Are you sure? That could be risky." "I'm sure. They destroyed Emily's life and stole years I'll never get back with my daughters. They need to pay, and I want the whole world to know what they did." As the plan began to take shape in his mind, Michael returned home. When he walked in, he saw Emily asleep on the couch while the girls played on the living room rug. It was a scene of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He knew he had to protect this moment, this newfound chance at happiness, at all costs. Michael understood that publicly exposing Gregory and Jessica would require meticulous planning. He couldn't simply call a meeting or present the evidence abruptly. He wanted something grand, an event that would not only confront them but also reveal their true nature to the world. He decided to host a lavish party at his mansion, a symbol of his return to society after years of keeping a lower profile. The pretense would be to celebrate his company's anniversary, a natural draw for the industry's biggest names, the press, and influencers. He knew Gregory and Jessica wouldn't refuse such an exclusive invitation. In the meantime, Michael didn't neglect his role as a father. He spent every free moment with Chloe and Charlotte, getting to know their personalities and building a relationship that felt like an unexpected gift. The girls captivated him with their laughter and the way they began to call him Daddy without hesitation. He realized that each moment with them was an opportunity to reclaim the time he had lost. Emily, though still cautious, had begun to lower her defenses. On a quiet evening, as she watched Michael playing with the girls, she approached him and said with a shy smile, "You're doing really well with them." Michael looked at her, surprised but pleased. "I'm just trying to make up for the time I lost. It's the most important thing to me now." Emily sighed softly. "They're happy. And I think I am too." Those words meant more to Michael than he could express. He reached out and held her hand for a moment. A simple gesture, but one laden with meaning. As preparations for the party moved forward, Michael made sure to keep Emily and the girls safe at the apartment. He was well aware that Gregory and Jessica still posed a threat and couldn't afford to take any chances. He hired private security to protect them and ensured that only trusted individuals knew their location. The night before the event, Michael reviewed every detail. He had prepared a speech for the party, during which he would reveal the evidence of Gregory and Jessica's betrayals in front of everyone. The public humiliation would only be the beginning. He had legal orders ready to ensure both of them faced immediate consequences. He had also made an important decision. He wanted Emily to be there. He knew it was risky, but he believed her presence would amplify the emotional impact of his revelations and show the depth of the harm Gregory and Jessica had caused. When he mentioned it to Emily, she hesitated. "Michael, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Being there, facing it all again. It's too much." "I understand, Emily. I would never force you, but I think that if you're by my side, it will show them they didn't win. That we're together, despite everything they did to tear us apart." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes full of doubt and conflicting emotions. Finally, she nodded slowly. "I'll go, but not for them. I'll go for us, for Chloe and Charlotte." The night of the party arrived. Michael's mansion was stunning, adorned with crystal chandeliers, extravagant floral arrangements, and lighting that highlighted every luxurious detail. Guests began arriving in their expensive cars, and the press gathered at the entrance to cover what promised to be one of the most talked-about events of the year. Emily was nervous as she got ready. Michael had hired a stylist to assist her and provided an elegant gown that made her feel like the woman she had been years ago, before all the pain and suffering. Chloe and Charlotte, excited by the festive atmosphere, played around her, calling for Michael to see their sparkling tiaras. As she descended the stairs, Michael was left speechless at the sight of them. Emily looked radiant, and the girls, dressed in their matching little gowns, seemed like angels. He approached them, smiling. "You look beautiful. Tonight is as important to me as it is to you." Emily tried to smile, but her nervousness was evident. Michael took her hand. "Remember, you're not alone. I'm right here with you." When they arrived at the party, Emily's presence caused a stir among the guests. Many recognized her from her past relationship with Michael and seemed confused about why she was there. Gregory and Jessica, already present, were visibly unsettled when they saw her. Michael noticed their reactions and felt a wave of satisfaction. The evening progressed with music, formal speeches, and an atmosphere of celebration. Michael, however, was waiting for the perfect moment to act. He kept an eye on Gregory and Jessica from a distance, both of them chatting and pretending nothing was amiss. When the time came for his speech, Michael stepped onto the stage set up in the center of the grand hall. His voice was steady as he thanked everyone for attending and briefly reflected on the company's success. However, as his tone shifted, the room fell silent. Tonight, we're not just here to celebrate what we've built together, but also to stand for what's right. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. That's why I need to share something important with all of you. Michael projected the messages exchanged between Gregory and Jessica onto a large screen, along with evidence of their financial schemes. The impact was immediate. Gasps and murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd as Gregory and Jessica tried to maintain their composure, though their faces betrayed growing panic. This evidence reveals who Gregory and Jessica truly are. They didn't just betray me. They endangered our company and everyone in this room. And that I cannot forgive. Before either of them could respond, security personnel hired by Michael entered the hall and served legal orders to both Gregory and Jessica. Jessica tried to argue, her voice drowned out by the murmurs and disapproving stares of the guests. Gregory, clearly desperate, attempted to slip out discreetly but was stopped by the guards. Michael stepped down from the stage and walked over to Emily, who was watching everything from a distance with the girls. He extended his hand to her and led her to the center of the room. "This is Emily, the woman they stole from my life. And these are Chloe and Charlotte, our daughters, whom I was kept from knowing because of them." The hall was completely silent. Michael turned to Emily, knelt down, and pulled a small box with a ring from his pocket. "Emily, you've given me the greatest joy of my life, our family. I want to spend the rest of my days by your side. Will you marry me?" Emily, with tears streaming down her face, could barely speak but nodded. The hall erupted in applause as Chloe and Charlotte ran to embrace them, sealing the moment with a childlike innocence that moved everyone present. After the proposal, the party took on an entirely different tone. The formal atmosphere was replaced by a wave of genuine emotion that swept through the guests. Many were still stunned by the revelations about Gregory and Jessica, but the moment of unity between Michael, Emily, and the girls stole all the attention. As security escorted Gregory and Jessica out of the hall, murmurs began again. "I never thought Gregory was capable of something like this," whispered one of the company's directors to another. Jessica, who had always wielded her position as Michael's wife to assert dominance, now walked with her head hung low, utterly humiliated. Michael felt a surge of relief as he watched them leave his life for good. For the first time in years, he felt fully in control of the situation. With all eyes still on him, he spoke again. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. But more than that, I want you all to know that this is not just a celebration of what we've built as a company. It's a celebration of a new chapter. A chapter one want to share with my family." He extended his hand to Emily, who hesitated for a moment before taking it. Chloe and Charlotte, holding tightly to his hands, looked around at the faces in the room with curiosity. It was clear that even at their young age, they were beginning to grasp the significance of the moment. Michael led Emily and the girls to a more private area of the hall, away from the prying eyes of the crowd, so they could breathe and recover from the night's intense emotions. He looked at Emily and said, "Tonight was the first step in undoing everything they did to us. But I want you to know this is just the beginning. Everything they took from us, I'll give it back to you tenfold." Emily smiled shyly. "You've already given me more than I ever imagined, Michael. But what matters now is that we're together. The girls finally have the father they deserve. That's enough for me." As they talked, Chloe tugged at Michael's suit jacket. "Daddy, Does this mean we're going to live with you forever? He knelt down beside her and Charlotte. That's right, sweetheart. We're going to be a family forever. The rest of the evening was calmer, with Michael and Emily enjoying more intimate moments with the girls, while the guests continued to buzz about the night's events. The revelation of the truth not only restored Michael's reputation but also solidified his image as a man who had not only rebuilt his family but also sought justice for them. In the days following the party, Michael began rebuilding his life alongside Emily and the girls. He decided to take a temporary leave from the company to dedicate himself entirely to his family. Although he had exposed Gregory and Jessica, the emotional scars they had left behind were still present, especially for Emily. Michael noticed that Emily was struggling to adjust to their new reality. Despite all the comfort he could provide, she still carried the weight of years of hardship and fear. One morning, as they had breakfast together, Michael saw that she seemed distracted, her gaze lost out the window. "Emily, is everything okay?" he asked, placing his hand over hers on the table. She hesitated before replying. "It's just a lot to process, Michael. I'm happy we're together again, but all of this still feels surreal. Going from where we were to this, it's like a dream, and I'm afraid I'll wake up." Michael squeezed her hand firmly. "It's not a dream, Emily. It's real, and I'm here with you. We'll get through this together. You don't have to carry this weight alone." Meanwhile, Chloe and Charlotte seemed to be adjusting quickly to their new life. Michael took them to a park in Manhattan and was delighted to see them running and playing freely, something they clearly hadn't had many opportunities to do before. He realized how much those simple moments meant to them, and to him. One quiet evening, Michael brought up something important to Emily. "I think we should start family therapy. Not just for you, but for the girls too. They've been through a lot, and I think it would be good for all of us to work through it together." Emily was hesitant at first. "Michael, do you really think that's necessary? I just want to forget what happened and move on." "I understand, but I don't think this is something we can simply forget. We deserve more than that. We need to heal these wounds to truly start fresh. Please, just think about it." She nodded, realizing that Michael might be right. As the days went by, the family's routine began to stabilize. Michael made it a priority to take Chloe and Charlotte to school every day and set aside time to play with them in the evenings. Emily, for her part, started opening up more, joining in family activities and allowing herself to dream about the future again. One special night, as they tucked the girls into bed, Chloe asked for a story. Smiling, Michael improvised a tale about a king who reunited with his queen and princesses after being apart for a long time. By the time he finished, the girls were fast asleep, and Emily watched him with a look full of tenderness. "You're doing even better than I imagined as a father," she said softly. Michael chuckled softly. "I'm just trying to be what they need, and what you need too." Emily leaned in, and for the first time since their reunion, she kissed him, slowly and gently. It was a moment of reconnection that seemed to seal everything they had endured together. As the weeks passed, Michael, Emily, and the girls began to settle into a routine that finally resembled a normal life. However, the healing process was far from simple. The family therapy Michael had suggested unearthed deep-seated traumas they all needed to confront. Chloe and Charlotte, though young, carried confused memories of the hardships they had experienced with their mother. Emily, on the other hand, struggled to accept that she now had a partner who not only wanted to help her, but was willing to share all her burdens. During one therapy session, the therapist asked Emily, "How do you feel about your role in the family now that you're in a safer environment?" Emily hesitated. She looked at Michael, who was holding her hand, and then at the girls, who were distractedly drawing on the rug beside them. "I feel grateful, but also guilty. For years, all I did was survive. I couldn't give my daughters what they needed. And now, seeing Michael with them, I realize how much was taken from them. Sometimes, I feel like I don't deserve all this." Michael immediately spoke up. "Emily, you're the reason we have these amazing girls. You did what you thought was best to protect them and me. If anyone here deserves happiness, it's you." The therapist smiled. "That's an important point for all of you. Learning to forgive yourselves and let go of the past is crucial for building this new life together." After that session, Emily began to reflect more deeply on her emotional barriers. She realized that, although she was trying to adapt, part of her was still trapped in the past. This was evident in small habits: her constant need to check that the doors were locked, her reluctance to talk about the difficult years, and even her hesitation to dream about the future. One evening, as Michael prepared dinner for everyone, a gesture he had adopted to show his commitment to their family, Emily decided to open her heart. "Michael, I need to tell you something," she began, watching the girls play with their dolls in the living room. "For years, I convinced myself that staying away from you was the right thing to do. But now that we're together again, I see how much it hurt all of us. I want you to know I'm trying to let it go. But it's a slow process." Michael put the spatula down and walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "I know, Emily. I don't expect you to forget everything overnight. I just want you to know that you're not alone. We're in this together, every step of the way." That conversation marked a turning point. Emily began to open up more, sharing stories of what she had endured during the years they were apart. Though it was painful to revisit those memories, she felt as if she were finally exorcising those demons, with Michael by her side as a constant pillar of support. Meanwhile, Chloe and Charlotte were thriving. Each day, the girls grew more confident and joyful, as if the shadow of the past were gradually lifting. They loved hearing Michael's stories about his childhood and began calling him Daddy, with the natural ease of children who had never known a different reality. The family's progress brought about tangible changes, but life doesn't always allow wounds to heal without testing their resilience. One afternoon, while Michael was in a meeting with his lawyers discussing the legal developments involving Gregory and Jessica, Emily received an unexpected phone call. The number was unknown, but the voice on the other end felt like a punch to the stomach. "Emily," said Jessica, her voice cold and dripping with irony, "I hope you're enjoying your new life. But don't forget, things can change very quickly." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She tried to remain calm, but her voice trembled as she replied, "What do you want, Jessica? You've already lost. It's over." Jessica laughed, a hollow and menacing sound. "Over? Don't be naive. Do you really think Michael can protect you forever? I lost everything because of you, and I'll make sure you pay for it. Consider this a warning." The call ended abruptly, leaving Emily frozen in place. She looked at Chloe and Charlotte, who were playing on the rug, blissfully unaware of what had just happened. A wave of panic washed over her. What if Jessica followed through on her threats? When Michael returned home that evening, he found Emily visibly shaken. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, nervously wringing her hands. "Emily, what happened?" he asked, immediately concerned. She told him about Jessica's call, and Michael was furious. He grabbed his phone and called his security team, instructing them to strengthen the surveillance around the apartment and ensure that no one came near the family without authorization. "She won't intimidate us, Emily. I promised to protect you and the girls, and I'm going to keep that promise, no matter what it takes." Despite his reassuring words, Michael knew that Jessica still had connections that could make her dangerous. He decided to act quickly, directing his lawyers to expedite the legal proceedings to ensure Jessica faced harsher consequences for her actions. That night, as the girls slept, Michael and Emily had a heartfelt conversation. "I knew it wouldn't be easy to leave all this behind," Emily said, tears welling up in her eyes. "But I didn't expect her to still be able to affect me like this." Michael cupped her face in his hands, looking into her eyes. "Emily, she has no power over you anymore. We're together now. She's desperate because she knows she's lost, and I'll make sure she never has the chance to hurt you or the girls again." Emily nodded, but the fear lingered in her expression. Michael realized that to truly defeat Jessica, it wasn't enough to fight her legally. He needed to give Emily something she'd never had before. An unshakable sense of security, something greater than any external threat. In the days that followed, Michael doubled down on his efforts to ensure his family's well-being. Beyond reinforcing their security, he began planning something special, a gesture that would symbolize not only their unity but also the start of a new chapter, free from the shadows of the past. Michael was determined not to let Jessica's threats disrupt the stability he had been building with Emily and the girls. He knew Jessica was dangerous, but he also knew that people like her thrived on the fear they could instill. The best countermeasure was to show her she no longer had any power over them. The next morning, during breakfast, Michael made an announcement he had been secretly planning. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened yesterday and what we need as a family. So, I've decided we're going on a trip together. Something to mark the beginning of a new chapter for us." Chloe and Charlotte squealed with excitement. "A trip? Where to, Daddy?" Chloe asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "It's a surprise," Michael replied with a smile. "But I promise it'll be somewhere special." Emily hesitated. "Michael, I'm not sure this is the best time. What if this is exactly what Jessica wants? To distract us so she can make a move?" Michael placed his hand over hers on the table. "Emily, that's exactly why we need to do this. We can't live in fear of what she might or might not do. I've taken every necessary precaution. Security will be reinforced, and no one will find us." After much discussion, Emily agreed. A few days later, they departed for an isolated countryside house in the Hamptons, a place Michael had visited during his childhood and which held special meaning for him. Surrounded by nature, it was far from the noise and worries of the city. When they arrived, Chloe and Charlotte immediately ran off to explore the garden, their laughter filling the air. Emily turned to Michael, who was unloading the luggage from the car. "This place is beautiful, Michael. Thank you for thinking of this." He smiled. "I want this to be a new beginning for us. Here we can leave everything else behind, even if just for a few days." Those days became a true balm for the family. They strolled along the beach, had picnics, and spent nights around a campfire, sharing stories and laughing together. For the first time in years, Emily felt herself truly relaxing. The weight on her shoulders seemed lighter, and she began to believe that perhaps the future wasn't as threatening as she'd imagined. One evening, after the girls had gone to sleep and the fire crackled softly in the garden, Michael and Emily sat side by side, gazing at the stars. "Emily," he began, pulling something out of his pocket. It was a small wooden box. "I've been planning this for a while, but I think now is the right moment." He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a star-shaped pendant. "I want you to have this. It's a symbol of what you mean to me and the girls. You're the light that guides us." Emily was speechless. She took the necklace with trembling hands, silent tears streaming down her face. "Michael, I don't know what to say. Thank you. This means more to me than you could ever know." Michael embraced her, and there, under the stars, they shared a moment of peace and hope, as if the past was finally beginning to loosen its grip on them. After their trip to the Hamptons, Michael and Emily returned home, feeling more connected than ever. The girls couldn't stop talking about the moments they'd shared, and Emily felt as though an invisible weight was beginning to lift. However, returning to the city brought back some lingering worries. Michael knew there were still battles to be fought, and one of them was about to emerge. The next day, Michael received a call from Daniel, his attorney. Daniel's voice sounded concerned. "Michael, we need to talk. Jessica is claiming she was manipulated by Gregory and is seeking a more favorable plea deal." Michael took a deep breath, suppressing his anger. "She's trying to escape the consequences, as always. Daniel, I want her to face everything she deserves. Don't agree to any kind of deal. Understood. But I want you to be aware. She might try to use anything against you, including your relationship with Emily." Michael felt his stomach churn. He knew Jessica was capable of exploiting any weakness to save herself, but he couldn't allow her to harm Emily again. "Do whatever it takes to ensure she has no leverage. I won't let her touch my family." Later, Michael shared the news with Emily, who was visibly shaken. "So she's still trying to come after us?" she asked, her voice filled with anxiety. "Yes, but I won't let her get anything. We're far ahead, Emily. She's desperate, and that means she's running out of options." Emily nodded, but her mind was restless. During the years she spent away, she had developed a constant sense that something could always go wrong, and now that feeling was returning with full force. Meanwhile, Michael ramped up his preparation to counter Jessica. He met with his legal team almost daily, reviewing every detail of the case to ensure there were no loopholes. He also hired a private investigator to monitor Jessica's movements, determined to stay one step ahead of her plans. A week later, during a quiet dinner with Emily and the girls, Michael received a message from Daniel. It read simply, "We have something you need to see. Call when you can." Michael tried to mask his concern to avoid alarming Emily and the girls, but his thoughts were racing. As soon as dinner was over and the girls were tucked into bed, he called Daniel. "Michael, we found evidence that Jessica is trying to recruit Gregory to help her again. Despite all the charges against him, it seems she's still manipulating him to act as her accomplice." Michael's anger was immediate. "This is unbelievable. Even after everything, they're still conspiring against me. Daniel, do we have enough to use this against them? We're building on it. But the fact that they're acting this way could work to our advantage. It strengthens the case against both of them." Michael ended the call and sat on the couch, massaging his temples as he tried to process the information. Emily noticed his tension and approached him. "Michael, what's wrong? Is there something new?" He pulled her close and explained everything. "I didn't want to worry you, but they're not stopping, Emily. Jessica is still trying to manipulate Gregory, and this only proves that they're both still a threat. But don't worry, I'll make sure they're stopped for good." Emily placed her hand on his face, gently making him look at her. "Michael, I trust you, and even though this scares me, I know that together we're stronger than anything they try to do." In that moment, Michael realized that, despite all the challenges, their unity was the most powerful weapon they had. The days that followed were a race against time. Michael and his legal team intensified their efforts to ensure Jessica and Gregory were legally neutralized before they could cause more harm. Emily, meanwhile, did her best to maintain normalcy at home, focusing on the girls and trying to push aside her own fears. On a quiet morning, as Chloe and Charlotte played in the garden, Emily found an envelope slipped under the door. There was no sender, only her name written hastily. Opening it, her heart raced. Inside was a photo of her, Michael, and the girls during their trip to the Hamptons, clearly taken from a distance, accompanied by a note that read, "You will never be safe." Panic coursed through Emily's body. Her breathing became shallow, and her hands trembled. She rushed inside and called Michael, who was on his way to a meeting. "Michael, you need to come home now. Something's happened." Michael arrived shortly after, finding Emily sitting on the couch, still clutching the photo and the note. He took the papers from her, and his expression hardened as he read the threat. "This was Jessica or Gregory. They're trying to intimidate us." Emily shook her head. "Michael, this isn't just a threat. It's a warning. They're watching us. How can we protect ourselves from this?" Michael knelt in front of her, holding her hands. "Emily, I promise you, nothing will happen to you or the girls. I'll increase security even more and make sure they're stopped. But don't let this consume you. That's exactly what they want, for us to live in fear." He immediately called his security team and handed over the photo and note for analysis. At the same time, he instructed the private investigator to trace the source of the threat. Michael also decided he wouldn't wait any longer. It was time to confront Jessica and Gregory directly. A few days later, armed with new evidence, Michael filed an urgent motion for a court hearing, requesting restraining orders against Jessica and Gregory. During the hearing, Jessica maintained her usual facade of innocence, but Gregory appeared increasingly unhinged, as though he knew his downfall was inevitable. In court, Michael presented all the evidence: Jessica's manipulation, Gregory's fraudulent schemes, and finally, the recent threat. The judge listened intently before delivering their ruling. Jessica and Gregory were formally charged with multiple crimes, and a restraining order was issued, barring them from coming near Michael, Emily, or the girls. After the hearing, Emily felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Michael, you did all of this for us. I don't even know how to thank you." He embraced her. "You don't need to thank me, Emily. Protecting you and the girls is the least I can do. This battle isn't over yet, but we're closer to ending it." That night, back home, Michael called the girls over and held them in a tight embrace. "You are the reason for all of this. For you, I would face anything." With the restraining orders in place and Jessica and Gregory formally charged, it seemed the battle was finally nearing its end. However, Michael knew they might still try something desperate. He strengthened the security around their home and asked Daniel to closely monitor the developments in the case. Despite the precautions, Michael wanted his family to start experiencing the freedom of a life without fear. He decided to organize a small celebration at home, something intimate, just for the four of them. The idea was to turn an ordinary moment into something special, showing Emily and the girls that happiness was still possible, even after everything they had endured. As Michael decorated the living room with soft lights and balloons, Chloe and Charlotte ran around excitedly, helping to scatter flowers across the table. Watching the scene, Emily felt a wave of emotion. It was the first time in a long while that she had seen her daughters so happy, without any shadow of worry. During dinner, Michael raised a toast. "I want this moment to be etched in our memories. We're together as a family, and nothing and no one will ever separate us again." Emily smiled, her heart warmed by his words. But as she looked at the girls, laughing and playing, she realized something important. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. After dinner, as the girls played with Michael on the living room rug, Emily felt the need to express something she had been holding inside. "Michael," she began, calling him aside. "I never thought it would be possible to feel this again. This lightness, this joy. You've brought it back to me and the girls, and I'll never be able to thank you enough." Michael cupped her face, his eyes steady and kind. "Emily, you're the reason I never gave up. You gave me 2 incredible daughters and a chance to start over. I'd do it all again just to be here with you." That night, as they tucked the girls into bed, Charlotte hugged Michael tightly. "Daddy, we're gonna stay like this forever, right? Together?" Michael knelt down to look directly into her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, forever." Emily watched the scene, feeling a peace that had long seemed unattainable. She knew there were still unresolved matters, but at that moment, she decided that fear would no longer have a place in her life. For the first time in years, she chose to believe in the future. Months passed, and the lives of Michael, Emily, and the girls began to settle into a new reality filled with promise. Jessica and Gregory faced their trials, and the weight of their crimes was finally bearing down on them. Michael knew that this dark chapter was about to close, and he decided it was time to take a definitive step to solidify the future of his family. He began planning something grand, a wedding that would not only celebrate his love for Emily, but also symbolize the triumph over all the challenges they had faced together. He wanted it to be a memorable occasion, with every detail reflecting the journey that had brought them back to one another. When he shared his idea with Emily, she was surprised but deeply moved. "Michael, all I've ever wanted is to be with you. It doesn't have to be extravagant to make me happy." "I know," he replied with a smile, "but this isn't just for you. It's for us. For Chloe, Charlotte, and everyone who's seen what we've been through and what we've accomplished together. I want them to see that love and courage can overcome anything." The wedding was scheduled for a sunny afternoon in a luxurious garden outside the city. The decor was elegant, with soft shades of white and gold, and the flowers chosen by Chloe and Charlotte added a personal touch. The girls were thrilled about their roles as ring bearers and could hardly wait to see their parents get married. When Emily walked down the aisle, arm in arm with Michael, silence fell over the venue. She was stunning, but it was her expression, serene and joyful, that captivated everyone's attention. Michael, waiting for her, seemed unable to hold back his tears as he watched her approach. The vows were deeply moving. Michael spoke of the years of pain and longing, but also of the strength he had found in reuniting with Emily and their daughters. "You taught me what it means to fight for what matters, Emily. And today, I promise you and our girls that there will never be a day when I'm not by your side." Emily, with tears streaming down her face, responded, "You were my anchor when everything seemed lost, even when you weren't by my side. Today, I promise you that this will be a new life, a new story, where love always wins." When the girls walked down the aisle with the rings, the moment was magical. Chloe and Charlotte, dressed like little princesses, walked proudly with bright smiles. They handed the rings to their parents, who exchanged them while the audience applauded, deeply moved. At the end of the ceremony, as everyone celebrated, Michael lifted Chloe and Charlotte into his arms and said, "You two are the heart of our family. And now we're complete." Emily embraced him, and together, under the applause of their guests, they sealed the promise of a future filled with love, courage, and hope. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and a comment. Let me know which city you're watching this video from. A big hug, and see you in the next story.